All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight, presented by FanDuel here at The Volume. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, etc. For the third time today, we're covering Celtics Bucks in this video. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to The Volume's YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss any show announcements. And then last but not least, if for whatever reason you guys miss one of these and you can't get back over to YouTube to finish, you can find them wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. So, the Boston Celtics had an offensive rating in December before today of 107. That's 107 points per 100 possessions. That was dead last in the NBA over that span. We did several videos on them over that span, and I kind of keyed in on a couple of specific things. Jayson Tatum, his efficiency really tanked after that Warriors game. It was almost like he lost his mojo a little bit, which I get. It was a confidence hit. He had an opportunity against the team that he did not play well against in the playoffs last year to kind of show that he had moved past that and made the necessary improvements in that specific matchup. And he came out and he played very, very poorly, which I think would mess with any basketball player's confidence. And, you know, the reality is outside of that Warriors series and this recent stretch of basketball, Jayson Tatum has been really damn good for the rest of this calendar year. And so I thought that was kind of part of it. And then when we dove into the numbers, if you guys remember, this was a Celtics team that shot extremely well in spot-up situations to start the year. And on open and wide open looks during this rough month, they just weren't shooting very well. And, you know, again, when it comes to shot result, it's important to differentiate between small sample sizes and big sample sizes, right? Like when you're talking about the New York Knicks, and you're talking about opponent three-point percentage, it's not the same to be like, oh, they're getting shooting luck when we're talking about a third of the season. And it's 20, 30 games where every single night it's a different opponent coming in and they're all shooting poorly. Like, then you got to give some credit to their physicality in the way that that's causing an impact. But when the same team, regardless of opponent, including against some inferior opponents, in a shorter sample size that spans just a week or two, is struggling to hit shots, that tends to be a little bit more just a case of a streak. You know, it's kind of the natural case. Jump shooting, I always talk about, is really hard mentally on basketball players. Why? Because in your best season, for the most part, you're going to shoot less than 50% on threes, right? And so you've got to condition yourself to deal with failure. You're always struggling with confidence in certain stretches as a shooter, because even if you do everything right, you might go and miss a bunch of them. You might miss 5-10 in a row. You might go a month where as a team you don't shoot as well as you normally do. And then there will be the flip side of that where everyone's confidence is high, everybody feels good about themselves, and they're all going in. And that's just kind of the natural pathway of shooting. Well, they blew the lid off of their offensive struggles in that second half against Milwaukee. They posted an offensive rating, meaning points per 100 possession, of 157 in that second half. They made 19 threes, and Jayson Tatum scored 41 points. So the shots started going in. Jayson Tatum started making shots in his isolations and in his, like, the shot-making areas of the game. And what do you know? The Celtics offense got going. I wanted to take some time to talk about Tatum here because I think he still is a bit underrated. That game was pretty close, back and forth through the first couple minutes of the third quarter, until about the 9-minute mark of that third quarter. And Jayson Tatum blew that game open with shot making. He went 7 for 10 with 20 points in the third quarter, and it was all high-level shot making. It wasn't stuff that Milwaukee was doing wrong. His first basket was an extremely difficult, covered a ton of ground on a step-back three against Grayson Allen on the left wing that was defended perfectly, and he knocked the shot down. Then he was working against Giannis in pick and roll on the right wing and got over the top of a screen. Lopez stepped up, hard step back, knocked down the jump shot. I remember watching him doing these behind-the-back dribbles as Giannis was getting super aggressive into his dribble pocket. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, look at the growth Jayson Tatum is experiencing as a ball handler and how much different he is in that area compared to where he was a couple of years ago. Then there was a play with Grayson Allen on the left wing. Shot clock's winding down. There's like 3 seconds left. He's got a live dribble. He's out at the three-point line. He's already made a couple of step-back jump shots. Is he going to take another one? No. He saw a driving angle and beat Grayson Allen off the dribble and made a bank shot in the lane, a high percentage shot. A few possessions later, he's on the right wing. He's got Giannis. And Giannis is playing too far back off of him. He's like 3-4 feet off of him. Tatum just nice, slow jab step, elevates and knocks down the three. It's not a jab step to get separation. He already has separation. It's a jab step to get your rhythm. That's a little lesson for young basketball players. A lot of times, like, you're making reads as a jump shooter based on how much room the defender is giving you, but it's really hard in a break rhythm situation, meaning you're just kind of dribbling the basketball, to go up into a shot. You don't really practice that very often, right? So sometimes you need a rhythm move. A lot of players in a triple threat, it's just a jab step. It just makes it so that when you're wide open, you can go to a move you practice a lot, rather than, like, how often do you practice just holding the basketball and looking around and then rising up and shooting? You don't. That's a break rhythm situation. So you regain your rhythm by going to something you practice, like a jab step three. Off the dribble, you'll see a lot of players do hard in and out dribbles in that situation. Damian Lillard is like this. He's off the screen, sees lots of space, hard in and out dribble just to get his rhythm so that he's rising into a shot that he's practiced a bunch so he can lean on that confidence. So he knocks down that jab step three over Giannis. Post up on Drew Holiday on the right block. Fade away over his right shoulder. Bucket. Then he does a little short roll with Marcus Smart. So one of the things we don't really, we talk a lot about how to attack pick and roll coverages and things along those lines. We don't spend a ton of time talking about how to attack switching coverages. And the Bucks went to more switching in that third quarter, and they were switching all of the guard-to-guard actions. And Marcus Smart and Jayson Tatum run a pick and roll. And if you got to think about body positioning when it comes to switches, because if you just get the switch and pull it out, then you're limited to ISO. And that can be great if you've got the right matchups, but in really good against really good teams, devolving into ISO ball is not always a good thing. So you got to find ways to get good looks off of switches. And one of the best ways is if I'm Marcus Smart and my defender is up on me and you come set a screen, if he has to switch onto the screener has the ability to leverage himself so that he's got him pinned on his backside, because whoever's guarding Marcus Smart now has to guard Tatum, right? So if Tatum sets a screen and the screen defender runs into the screen but then switches onto Tatum, Tatum can pin him on his backside. Tatum did this, and he had Pat Connaughton on him, got him sealed on his backside. Marcus Smart threw it over the top, and Tatum got a free short roll to the rim. Now, on this possession, Connaughton bailed out and sprinted back to the rim, and Tatum made the read by just turning back around and shooting like a really easy little 7-foot fadeaway in the lane. But that's just a little detail of how to attack a switching defense in a way that doesn't involve ISO. Use your body positioning to your advantage. If they're switching from the top side, you've already got the backside. If you can turn and pin yourself, you've got an angle going towards the rim. And then his last bucket in the third quarter was a run-out layup after a Giannis missed layup, which was just inexplicable bad defense from the Bucks. But the point is of those 7 shots, 6 of them were high difficulty off the dribble, or 5 of them were high difficulty off the dribble jump shots, and the other one was an isolation bank shot. Meaning, like, that's the difference between a 107 offensive rating and a much better offensive rating from a great team, which is typically just right around 120, right? The difference is 13 points per 100 possessions. What's that going to be? That's going to be manufacturing points with offensive rebounds. That's going to be manufacturing points at the foul line. That's going to be manufacturing points with shot making. That's rescuing possessions and hitting shots over the top of good defense. That's how you elevate an offense. Everyone's going to get 100, 107 points per 100 possessions just by being out there, right? These are professional basketball players. They're going to make enough plays. But the difference between good and great, or bad and good, I should say, is shot making. And Jayson Tatum put that on display in this game. You know, this summer, I put Jayson Tatum as the 6th best player in the NBA, if you guys remember. And everyone called me crazy. And I was just trying to be consistent with the way that I evaluate basketball players, which is I value playoff runs more than regular season basketball. When a player plays really well in the regular season, I think it's okay to say things like he's playing the best in this season, or he might be the best player in the world in this season. But in the grand scheme of things, playoff basketball is so different. The complication and the chess match and the physical wear and tear of a playoff run is so different that you need to factor that in at a different level. And so I want to be fair there. So, like, if you're going to tell me Jokic is the best player in the world, I'm going to give you a lot of pushback, because I'm going to be like, there's just not a playoff resume to back it up, right? In terms of team success. He's obviously had some successful playoff runs that are shorter, but he hasn't had that team success piece. Like, Jayson Tatum's been to the conference finals 3 times. He's been to the NBA finals. That was a long playoff run with statistical performance and defense to match what we've seen from Kawhi Leonard over the years, what we've seen from all of the superstars that we consider to be the stamped guys around the league. And so I came out of that playoff run and I'm like, okay, Jayson Tatum deserves to be in this group. He's got the playoff resume. And if Kawhi Leonard did that exact same playoff run, put together that exact same playoff run, we would be considering him in the conversation for best player in the world. That's why I put him at number 6. And, it was definitely, an aggressive or whatever you want to call it type of opinion, but Jayson Tatum has legitimized it this year, resoundingly. He is absolutely one of the 5 best players in basketball. He's giving you high-level shot making that you've seen from the best scoring wings in the history of the league. That translates to the playoffs basically in every setting except for Golden State, which he's going to have to figure out. That's his big speed bump in his road, right? But he's doing it against everyone else. He did it against the Bucks last year. He did it against the Miami Heat last year. And then on the other end of the floor, he's one of the most versatile defensive players in the league. But I think he might be the best perimeter defender in all of basketball. He's every bit as good as Kawhi Leonard was at his absolute peak. That's the type of player that we're talking about. And so, I think he still is even in spite of all of this, a little underrated because his team's really good. And you're right. Like, the Celtics are freaking good. And that has to factor in to how we evaluate him. But, the reality is he's the engine that makes this whole thing work. And I hope he gets the appropriate credit. Really quickly on the Bucks, it's just, the Celtics did a really nice job on Giannis. Let's just be clear. To give you an idea, Giannis averages 11.4 restricted area attempts per game this season and makes 8.6 of them. And he was just 2 for 3 against Boston. So they just basically completely shut him off from the rim entirely. Al Horford did a really nice job in isolation defense. Jayson Tatum was pretty good in a handful of possessions against him. And then they did a really nice job of filling the gaps. You probably have heard people say this analyzing games before, like gapping or playing the gap. Essentially, you're on ball, you have a defender in front of you. There's off-ball players that are on both sides of you. They have defenders in front of them. There's gaps in between those 3 defenders on either side. And playing in the gap means that defensive player slides over into those gaps and makes it so that you have to make them pay with swing passes to three-point shooting. And against a team like Boston with that, as well as they close out at shooting, and obviously with Chris Middleton being out, it's just really hard for Milwaukee to hang in these types of matchups. And that's really my big takeaway from Milwaukee with this whole thing is like, they're damn good even without Chris Middleton. Brook Lopez is so good in their drop coverage. Giannis is the best player in the world. Drew Holiday's a very good two-way guard. They've got some guys who play hard and do dirty work. But the reality is they're not going to hang with the very best teams in the league consistently. They have some big wins, right? Like they beat the crap out of Golden State the other day, but they lost to the Lakers. They lost to Memphis bad. They lost to the Boston bad tonight. They're not going to consistently have success at this level of the game until Chris Middleton gets back. If you think about everything he does for them, he's a good wing defender. So that's a guy you're going to throw on Jayson Tatum. He's probably getting that matchup tonight, right? Or he's getting the Jaylen Brown matchup if Drew Holiday's going to be on Tatum. He's going to be able to take a significant defensive role. And he's probably going to be better at it on the roster than anybody not named Giannis in terms of guarding bigger wings. As good as Drew Holiday is, he gives up shots over the top. He's a very good playmaker. The Bucks consistently get better shots when he's on the floor. He's giving you more than a point per possession as a passer out of ISO, post-ups, and pick and roll. And then all that same shot-making stuff I was talking about with Tatum. Tatum is floating a Celtics offense with difficult shot-making over the top to elevate those offensive ratings. That's the same thing Chris Middleton can bring to the table is over-the-top shot-making. And then, he'd probably be the best spot-up player in terms of hitting open threes and attacking closeouts on the roster. So he's the best equipped player to make teams pay for loading up in the gap on Giannis, right? So, we could talk about the Bucks all we want, but the truth of the matter is they're handicapped as it pertains to their ultimate ceiling until they get their 3-and-D scoring wing back. And he's one of the best 3-and-D players in basketball. So it just makes it really difficult to evaluate their real ceiling. And that's like kind of the big question mark hanging over this whole season is you're like, Celtics. They've been better, right? Oh, and they beat the Bucks last year. But the Bucks just haven't consistently had potentially their second or third best player available, which makes it really tough to evaluate. All right, guys, that's all I have for right now. One more video tonight after Grizzlies Warriors. I'll see you guys then.